Bitcoin right now risks a massive rejection straight out of the bone zone for the first time since entering it nearly an entire human year ago. As baby bears worldwide prepare to make their final stand, will it be enough? And some alarming data that should set off your baloney detectors like we've never seen before. Right now, Bitcoin sits firmly within the bone zone, within the wider context no-no zone. And this is truly one of the biggest battles right now that we're about to face that we've potentially ever seen in the history of mankind, as Bitcoin is currently at a make or break moment, and some even much bigger things that will truly blow your mind are also happening here. So first of all, let's take a look at Silly Valley Bank resuming trading today. Doesn't look very good. It looks as though complete dumpage. And in fact, many banks, also First Republic Bank, not looking great. Many of these banks that have received the helping hand over the last 2 weeks continue to be in a little bit of trouble here. And one thing as well is that, as we all know, the Fed was late raising rates. Well, is it possible they're still, the fact they're raising rates still, maybe they're going to be a little late cutting also. Very likely. The case for a hard landing of the U.S. economy and Fed rate cuts has become stronger since the collapse of SVB, and it's very likely we will not be able to escape a recession, potentially a depression, in Jerome Powell and the Fed's fight against inflation. And with that being said as well, we can take a look at the modeled Fed funds rate, showing basically that they were way too dovish at first in handling inflation, and now they're way too hawkish, as Happy Hawaiian also puts it here, which I completely agree. They were about 8 months late starting to raise rates, and now, have they extended their stay? Have they been raising these rates too much, too late? Again, I think we are in very big danger of that happening. And JP Morgan chief strategist Marko Kolanovic also saying here, the stock market rally is over as commercial real estate risks begin to compound. And I mean, the top comment even saying, what rally? I mean, it hasn't really been that big of a rally. If we take a look at the SPX, again, we're fighting for our lives here on this trend line. So FDIC's Grunberg, regional bank liquidity remains stable. This means nothing. Okay, every day I get on Twitter and half of my feed is an FDIC person or a federal person or somebody with a little too much influence saying everything is fine and the banks are fine. And that's just not really something you want to hear. Also, something I think is a very good point here, pointed out by Coin Bureau, is that the SEC and the CFTC are throwing lawsuits everywhere, but the SEC is calling Kraken a security, but the CFTC is labeling it a commodity. And I absolutely agree that before we start doing any of this, shouldn't we at least agree or like have some kind of classification of this, right? It just seems like they're throwing darts every single direction to see what lawsuits work, what darts stick, what will damage crypto the most, it seems like. But, I mean, if you really zoom out and look at everything, it looks as though nobody has any idea what's going on. Anybody in government, they seem to just not have any agreement upon anything and just further adding fuel, furthering this chaos that we're seeing. We've also almost reached the 2008 levels of total assets involved in bank failures for this year, and we're only 3 months into the year. The third month of 2023 is not even over, and we're already reaching very crazy cataclysmic levels here. Does that mean something bad is heading for the banks and this potential collapse? I mean, probably, right? 2008 was about subprime mortgages and about kind of like lower and middle class people being unable to pay for things. Now, it's, again, kind of almost the opposite. It's like the banks can't even stay solvent. And if you don't see how that could be a much bigger issue, then, one thing I will say, if this would have happened in 2008 and it keeps getting worse, or it kept getting worse than like a comparison of where we are currently, that would have been very scary. I think it's a little less scary this time because, again, we have the option of cryptocurrency, of Bitcoin. I think that's a very comforting. I find a lot of comfort in that. I think at least we have that, right? There's a lot of bad things going on, but at least we have a decentralized ledger where we can store our money and they can't print more of it. That in itself, without including any of the other benefits of Bitcoin and crypto, I think is very comforting and reassuring. Now, I am pretty nervous, pretty worried about the macro everything, right? With banks, it's not going to be pretty, whatever happens over these next couple of months. But I do get some comfort just in the fact that at least I can store my money safely in crypto, in Bitcoin, in the best money that we've ever seen, unlike this literal inflationary monopoly money. The only thing that fiat, that USD has, is faith, because it's backed by nothing. So if people stop believing in it, like we've seen over the past 2 weeks a little bit, if that happens more and more, the USD is literally backed by nothing. It's bananas. If we're playing a game of Monopoly, right? Let's say I invite a couple of my friends over and we're drinking some juice and we're having a couple of quesadillas and we break out the Monopoly board and we start handing out our little paper money. The game goes really well as long as everybody's agreeing that these little pieces of paper are how we're valuing our properties, how we're, using as the common agreed upon form of currency. But as soon as Johnny gets mad, and he flips over the table and rips up the little piece of paper and says, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing this game anymore. You guys realize it's all just fake money. As soon as that happens, everyone realizes, okay, well, I guess nobody's going to accept this little baloney money anymore. And I think it's very likely that's been happening slowly for a very long time. But over the next couple of months, we might see that do one of those S-curves or massive bumps where everyone's like, wow, this really has no value. We've seen it with Venezuela. We've seen it with other countries. Hyperinflation is not some made-up fairy tale. It's a very real thing, and it's something that's happening right now. And it's not my opinion either. You can't choose to believe if it's happening or not. It is happening. So you can either live in fairy tale land and believe, okay, my money getting diluted and becoming worthless and worthless every year because of inflation is totally not a problem. Or you can say, okay, this is actually a huge problem. I should seek alternatives. Again, it's a very, very tangible, objective thing that's happening right now. But the breaking prosecutors raided several of France's biggest banks as a part of an investigation into what authorities say is one of Europe's largest tax thefts. Again, banks worldwide not looking great. It's not just happening in the US. It's not just happening in Switzerland or Germany. It's also France. It's happening everywhere. Everything is interconnected. These banks are not like individual entities that are not connected. Everything is connected. So when one thing happens, it's important to realize the cascading effects will be big. But also, in the last week, $1 billion drained from small banks. Over 50% of that going to the too big to fail banks. This is not necessarily a good thing, right? Think of all the services and the lending that regional banks supply. This is good news, however, Hong Kong to facilitate banking and financing for Bitcoin and crypto firms in an attempt to become a global hub of crypto. This isn't breaking news, but it is, again, there are places in the world that seem to be getting it right, as places like, seemingly the US, seem to be getting it completely wrong. Again, easy to understand. If Bitcoin gets pushed out of the US by heavy regulations and stuff like that, it will hurt Bitcoin probably in the short term, but it will not harm Bitcoin in the long run. It will be detrimental and horrible for the US if they would decide to do something like that. Okay. Crypto is worldwide. So it is kind of funny when people talk about, if the US does this, it's bad for Bitcoin. Yeah, sure it is in the short term, but the long term, it doesn't matter whatsoever. It only matters in the context that it will absolutely completely F people in the United States and limit their options. And their options, their best option then will be just keep their money in banks and USD, and they'll lose value every year. So it's very sad if they continue to do that. And maybe they should wake up. But if we take a look here in the last cycle, Bitcoin bottomed at the green midline of this logarithmic regression band, and it now faces resistance at the blue band up here in that $30,000 roughly dollar range, potentially performing a mid-top of this rally. But again, the very beginning of a cycle. But we could also see this, maybe we go up to 40, 35K, get rejected and spend a few months, going downwards or going sideways before ending up higher. I think it's a very likely outcome of this. Keep in mind, there are black swans that could make this negative in terms of price, or white swans or just black swans that actually help Bitcoin a lot because of this, meaning if people flock to Bitcoin, that would be one of the strongest black swans in a good way for Bitcoin that could ever happen. And Plan B, the creator of the failed stock-to-flow model, saying here, Bitcoin will go to, if it goes to 100 trillion, which is the global M2 money supply, it will be worth about $5 million at the current global M2 measurements. And at $27,000 per Bitcoin, markets estimate a 0.5 probability of that happening. That's a little confusing. What does that mean? Well, basically, Bitcoin accounts for about 0.5% of the global monetary supply. So what he's saying here is if something crazy like that would happen, where it either goes to zero or it goes to 100 trillion, meaning value of the global M2 money supply, it would be about a $5 million Bitcoin or a $0 Bitcoin if it gets, or if it goes the complete opposite way. But currently, where we sit is in between that 0 and 100 trillion valuation at about a 0.5% of that 100 trillion at about 27,000, which the 100% of that would be about 5 million. And we are seeing home price appreciation continue to slow, which is big. It's the lowest year-over-year increase since December of 2019, but is only of January. Real-time data shows a 1.7% year-over-year decline in home prices, the first decline in over a decade. Unemployment's like the big one. Housing is the more lagging indicator, actually. But we are seeing a little bit of that. But yeah, unemployment is the big thing they're waiting for before they slow up on these rate hikes. I personally think they're making a mistake. I think they, obviously, as I've been saying this for well over a year, they started hiking way too late, and I think they're going to stop hiking way too late. And we're already seeing these effects. That's why these banks are collapsing. But stock market continuing to be in a kind of boring position here. Bitcoin faces its gigantic big level here on the 15-day chart. You can see the MACD has a lot of strength, a lot of upside potential here in the short term. But a rejection at 30K is something I think everyone's anticipating, and I think it's a very likely possibility. I think realistically, it is a good place to consider that we get a short-term rejection here. That could take a few weeks or so before we could potentially head higher. This is a very big level. I have it marked here. It is clear why this is such a big level. There's not a lot of accumulated volume or anything in this range except for the 30K level. That is the only spot within the bone zone that truly warrants your attention. But yeah, other than that, Bitcoin, not really much to update on these charts. The DXY is still looking bad, still getting dumped on, and banks continue to also look bad and get dumped on. And currently I'm up about $16,000 or $17,000 in profit. If we do get this strong rejection off 30K and, go down to 25K or even lower, I'm going to be adding, this is just me, I'm not giving advice. This is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be adding to these positions here. My actual stop losses and my liquidation prices are very low, so I have the opportunity to do that. But if you're interested in trading and getting over 50,000 in deposit bonuses, massive sign-up bonuses as well for free without depositing, and as well 0 fees for spot trading, you can check out the links in the description, pinned there below. Using my sign-up links, absolutely, it's very important. 0% fees for spot trading is monumental. Without any further ado, that's for me.